Hello there. How are you today? Welcome to another lesson on Reinvent Your Impact, where I share advice and actionable skills every morning to help you become a better, more confident woman in leadership. And in case I haven't met you, I'm Dr. Geneva, leadership expert, and I've been in the leadership game for several decades. And one of the things that I believe and learned was that with the right mindset and skills, any woman can positively influence communities, the people you work with, the causes you care about, because leadership is about influence. And so you don't need a fancy title or one of those big time positions to lead change. You can do it whether you run a company or a club. You coach a kids' team, you organize volunteers, you lead at a church or in a family. You can grow and share your gifts. And in each of these lessons, my goal is to give you the tools that can turn your influence into greater impact. When women lead confidently from their strengths, families, organizations, and communities thrive. So, in today's lesson, I want to talk about personal branding. In fact, this whole week is about personal branding for women leaders. And so today I want to start off with, well, why is personal branding important? And I thought this quote would be perfect for today. Jeff Bezos. Now, everybody knows who Jeff Bezos is, right? Do you shop at Amazon ever? Well, hey, he's the founder of Amazon. And what he said about this subject is your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay. So, what do you think that means? Um, you know, a lot of that has to do with your personal brand being defined by the reputation that you have and the impression that you leave in other people's minds, even when you're not there, when you're not physically present. And it's about how others perceive and talk about your qualities, your actions, your character, most of the times when you ain't there, in your absence. So it's important to set the stage about personal brand. I happen to think personal brand has a lot to do with your story and your gifts that you share. And we'll talk about that later on in the week. So make sure you tune in, listen, watch to the lessons this week because it's all about personal branding. And I want to share some of that um, essence about storytelling because there's a great link between personal brand and storytelling. Okay, so stay tuned for that. But the 3 points that I want to make today, the first, when we talk about personal branding and why it's important, the first reason your brand, your personal brand is important because it helps you enhance your leadership presence and influence. It establishes and reinforces your presence in and out the room. And again, this is when you're there and when you're not. And it really is about creating that strong, positive, emphasis on that impression that resonates with your team and your peers and the contacts that you make in your industry. And um, it's important because it really elevates or boosts your influence and really helps you as you're steering your conversations and decisions And much of it is attached to your vision and values. So I want to break that apart. So if it's about enhancing personal brand, is enhancing your leadership presence, and it's about how others perceive you, then how they perceive you is how you act, and you act based upon your values and what you think is important. So you see, it all ties in. And um, it's interesting how sometimes we think that a personal brand is about a logo or a design. It ain't. Now, you want to get that if you're in business, or you want to particularly, differentiate yourself. Those things can happen, but those are the details. What's important really has more to do about how others perceive you, whether or not they saw that brand, whether or not you're in the room. The second reason that a personal brand is important, particularly for women in leadership roles, is that a brand can cultivate trust and credibility. So, if your brand is well defined, you can build trust. And because really you're operating on this clear set of values and authenticity. Again, we're bringing it back to ourselves and what the values are, what we believe in. And in other words, it shows through, it speaks up, oftentimes, even when you don't. Okay. And so, because if your brand reflects who you are, then it sets this reality foundation, so that, oh, here comes such and such, or there's so and so. I know what they're probably going to say or think about this. You've heard people say that. You say that about other people. You kind of know, you kind of expect. And if it's a good thing, it establishes that trust and credibility. So for women in leadership, it can help not only foster loyalty and respect among your team members. Team mothers, where did that come from? Okay, so that's what happens on this live. Something came out about that. There's some connection there, but I meant team members. It also strengthens your ability to lead effectively and make decisions that matter, because your team and your employees and those who work with you know what they can depend on. They know what to expect. And so a well defined brand helps you establish that trust and credibility. And the third reason why having a brand, a personal brand, matters, and why I wanted to start off this week talking about the personal branding for women leaders by first us exploring its importance, is that it helps you advance in your career. That personal brand. It can be a key differentiator in how you progress in your career, because folk will know what you can do, how they can rely upon you. They know your strengths, your skills, because you have a reputation, you have a brand, and your brand can position you more distinctively, makes you more visible for new opportunities, various collaborations and promotions, because you'll be thought of top of mind because of your brand. And again, even when you're not in the room. So when the folk are sitting around discussing, well, who can we ask to step into this role? Who can we tap to take on this new responsibility? Your brand steps out there first. Okay. And your brand will be speaking for you, even if you're not there, because really your brand is a showcase of your unique skills, experience, and your style. And if all that's good and it's what people are looking for, it'll make you a preferred choice for these various projects and roles. Again, remember I talked about personal brand is really your story. It's that combination of your skills and your experiences. And so it speaks, even if you're not in the room. And I wanted to say hello to everyone who's joined, whether you're on live or on the replay. How you doing? As you can see, this quote from Jeff Bezos really is very interesting because he really pulls out the point about not being there. So that as we think about developing our personal brand, that's why it's so important to build your brand based upon your values and your story, your experience. And so as you look at enhancing your brand, the first place to look is inside because it's going to talk about you whether you're in the room or not, whether you're there or not. So, what I want to wrap up by just inviting you to really think about the importance of your personal brand and understand that it's a very powerful tool on how you're perceived as a leader. And it's the impression that lingers, it's the reputation that speaks for you, even when you're not there to speak for yourself again. And it's important, particularly as women leaders, to be mindful of this legacy, frankly, we're creating through our actions, decisions, and interactions. I remember when I was making my transition from being in the nonprofit world for decades into the world of entrepreneurship as a late life um, entrepreneur. Many of you know my story that I decided to open up my business in my late 60s. And after years being in the nonprofit world, running organizations, being an executive, raising millions of dollars for business and community causes. And as I was making that transition, I was talking, sharing what I was going to do with a group of um, close, trusted advisors, people who I could get some input from. And every single one of them said to me, "Oh, we know you can do this because you have, you've studied, you've done much for others, you know how to do strategic planning, you can communicate, you can access dollars because you've raised them." And they went on and on, kind of ticking off the reasons why they knew I would be successful. And that was all based upon my story, my brand that I had built over the years. And they were suggesting that, well, that's who you are. You're going to take this into this brand new venture. And those things that you've done, they're going to be transferable and they're going to go with you because that's your reputation. And many of them not only lined up to support me, but gave me referrals. In fact, that's how I got my first big contracts when I started my business. So the point is how you build and craft your brand matters. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to reflect on what your personal brand is and what are you currently projecting. I want you to ask yourself, okay? Here's what I want to ask you. You ask yourself, what do people say about me when I'm not in the room? Okay. And then in asking questions, I want you to think about it yourself, but then I want you to go and ask three people. Now, look, don't go ask some folk that you trust that will give you honest feedback. Okay. But don't go after no negative people who are going to be negative all the time. Go and get some honest, candid feedback from people who, have your back, and ask them, what do they think about you? What is your brand? Ask them, what do you think my brand is? What is my reputation? What do you see or think about when you see or think about me? Okay. So I want you to do that. Um, Hear what they say, whatever it is, use that insight to enhance and shape your brand. And remember that your personal brand is your story. Make sure it resonates with who you are and, where you aspire to be. And remember, be the leader only you can be. I'm going to see you next time. Thanks for joining. Bye.